Hey, it's Michael with the TMI Lab. We got a Kurzweil, or if you're German, it's Kurzweil PC88mx synth keyboard controller. A beautiful machine, love it. She's old, and you can pick these up pretty cheap right now, like 100, $200. I mean, they're good boards, especially as a controller. They're really good too. A common problem with these, first of all, let me say this. There's a couple of versions of this board that are out there. The newer version, you got 9 screws on the back, the bigger screws. Take those out, push the panel back, lift it up from the back, and lay it over. That's the way you do. Be careful of the ribbon cords over there. So on the newer versions of the exact same board, you've got an additional 9 screws on the bottom. These things were notorious for twisting easily, and it wasn't firmed up enough. I think that's why they added this brace here, but this is screwed in from the bottom. So a total of 18 screws. And the screws you're looking for on the bottom, big ones, got the washers on them. Anyway, 9 on the bottom, 9 on the back, the bigger ones on the back, and that's how you do it. The rest of the screws on the back actually hold this I/O panel in. So those are here, little screws. Remove all of those and you can take this out and take a look at the board, which is what I had to do to find the issue. Low hum, persistent hum. The way that I located it was I had a microscope, a magnifying glass, and I was just checking all the traces. I was thinking it's got to be a broken trace, because once in a while it wouldn't do it. Or I would be probing around, putting pressure, slight twists on the board, checking for traces, that kind of stuff, and bad solder joints. And it would, once in a great while, it would stop. So I knew that the board would be working, and it was a simple, relatively simple fix. The problem is finding it. So I went through and did a visual inspection of all of the components on here. I'm going to start over here on the power side. This is the I/O board. It's got all the ins and outs. And it has the power here. Now this takes a 9.5 AC input. So you plug in a power wart or a wall wart that is 9.5 volts AC. If you get a third-party manufacturer and they say this is compliant with this particular keyboard, you should put your voltage meter on that output of the wall wart. If it doesn't say 9.5, you're not there. If it says 11, that's too much, and it's going to stress your stuff. If you have a problem, it may make it worse, or it may blow a component or an op amp, or something's got to give. So make sure you're using an actual compliant power supply for it. Check this cap here, make sure it's nice and snug and it's not wobbly. Make sure it's not bulgy. Check all your caps, make sure they're not bulgy. Check everything visually. What I found visually an issue, and you can see a little glob of solder right there, was this ground jumper, GJ2, was disconnected. It was really weird too, because it's 2 lines coming up. One was gone, and the other one was sticking straight up in the air, almost like it violently went, So I even thought about putting a fuse in its place instead of just doing a straight jump. But I put a little solder on there and reconnected that one. You also see some traces on some of these, and all of them have it, from this pin here on over, and then from the switch over to the power. I think they're just ensuring that you have good connection there. I checked the connection. I took one side off and checked it, and it was fine. But I went ahead and put it back in there. It was obviously working with it, so I'm going to leave it on there since that was made. This was one issue that I found. The next issue was difficult. So I had to look at the solder side, flip it over, had a magnifying glass, scanning everything from every angle, looking. And after about 30 minutes of going all the way through this board, I did some testing here, like on this op amp over here. The pin from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4. On pin 2 and 3, there's a diode, so I checked it both sides. Yeah, it works. So I assume that that's okay, and I just checked capacitance. You can see them draining when you're checking. Put the voltmeter on them. Make sure you're unplugged when you're doing stuff like that. Anyway, the problem was, and I'll try to get a picture on here, was the solder joint. Now, some people say, oh, it's cold solder joint. Nope, cold solder joint is when you don't have the iron on long enough to actually make a good meld between the post and the solder. So it won't exactly connect well, and it can easily fail. In this case, these things are heat sunk, so that's for good reason. They get hot, and I think it just failed over time. So there was a crack all the way around the post. And to test it, I just kind of put my headphones on, turn the volume on, up, and then I started putting some pressure on it, just kind of moving around just slightly to see if I got a change in the audio characteristics, and sure enough I did. So I went ahead and soldered that, fixed it up, plugged it in, tested it out, boom, solved. The only thing left to do on this board is a couple of keys that aren't, they're all clicky, but a couple of them that aren't really sounding very good unless you have a lot of pressure on them, so that's an easy fix as well. A little time consuming, but worth it. Also, replace the battery. Doesn't matter. When I get a board in, I don't check to see if the battery's good. I just automatically replace them. And this is the 2032. I'll put a link in the description. So that is the story with the PC88mx. And I did not see any information at all anywhere on any of the forums talking about the low hum, persistent low hum. If you do have one like that, it's probably one of these right here, and you need to make sure that these are voltage regulators. The pin on the left is an input, pin in the middle is a ground, pin on the right is the output, and I think in this particular case it was the input and the ground. Both of them kind of had a questionable one, but definitely the input was pretty much fried and not connected correctly. But it was very difficult to see. I had to use a magnifying glass and study this board for about half an hour. But I finally found it, fixed it. It works beautifully, sounds great, did a factory reset, and super duper ready to go. So I wanted to share that since there's nothing out there on it. If it's helped you in any way, please leave a comment. If you have questions, I'll do what I can to answer. I don't know everything, but been around the block a time or two, so maybe I can help. Check all your connections, make sure all of those are tight as well. But most failures happen right in this area. So that's about it for now. Until next time, rock on.